Hello everyone, my name is Paul Third, and this week I have a new jumper for you. Yes, I have an Audio Geek jumper, and I'm loving it, and I've been wearing it every day, and I've decided I love it so much I'm actually going to wear it at NAMM. Yes, they do not know what they've got coming for them. Actually, to be honest, it's probably me. They should be more worried. Me going to America, my god, probably end up kidnapped by fucking developers or something. I don't know if I'll ever come back. I'm going to talk about this interface from my personal perspective of nearly 6 months solid use, studio work in terms of like mixing DAW sessions, you know, like podcasting, streaming, blah blah blah. I've used, and again, analog gear. I've used it for many things. Now, in this review, it's going to be positive and negative. That every positive is going to be combated by negative and vice versa. Because as much as this interface is kind of a studio standard, there are a lot of teething things and things that annoy me. So as much as there's great points to it and there's a reason why I wanted to keep it so much, there's also things that are a bugbear. And I think it's important that I speak to you about them, because if you're considering paying $1,800 or $2,000, then it's very important I speak to you about these things. So let's get straight into it. Let's start off with a positive. Right, so a positive for the Apollo X6 is its analog to digital conversion. It actually has some of the best analog to digital conversion on the market. If you go on Audio Science Review, Amir measured it and it did come up exceptionally well. It was like top 3 or 4 at the time it was measured. So it has very good analog to digital conversion. And what I mean by that is it's got very low THD plus noise. When I kind of go into Doctor as a hardware mode and I do a loop, when I feed it like -6 dBFS, I'm getting THD plus noise levels of like -135 dB. Audient SP8 hitting at -6, the harmonic distortion is about -100 dB, which is still theoretically inaudible. But if we are talking like studio grade, like analog to digital conversion, that is, you know, top of the grade. So technically, like, you could still call it obviously a recording interface because you've got 2 mic pre's and you've got the 2 high Z line ins as well, in regards to like if you're using guitars, basses and stuff like that. But, you know, it is still very limited when you consider it's £1,800, and also considering that when you think about the RME UFX Mark II that sits around the same price, it's got basically like the same specs, kind of same line in, line outs, same options, but it has 4 microphone preamps. However, whilst it only has 2 microphone preamps, you can expand the interface because the Apollo X6 has ADAT in and out. It has 2 sets of ADAT in and ADAT out. So I've linked that up to the Audient Evo SP8 and it works flawlessly, and I had no issues with it whatsoever. However, you know, when we do kind of talk about the microphone preamps, they're just not any microphone preamps. Now, I'm not going to go over the top here, right? Many people go over the top, but they are unison microphone preamps. So essentially what that means is that you've got like the Apollo preamps, but what the unison technology does is it physically changes the impedance of the preamps to match the impedance of the analog preamps that the Universal Audio have modeled. The Universal Audio Apollo 1073 in unison mic preamp is, before I got that 500 series, it was the best microphone preamp I'd ever used. There's something about that 1073 where it's just smooth and it just sounds better. Dynamically it sounds better. There's less kind of plosives, the S's are smoothed out a little bit, and it adds a little bit of richness, and it's subtle, but I could definitely hear a difference when I did level matched ABs. And, you know, to have that availability of different preamps and you can match the impedance is quite a selling point, and it's not bullshit. It does work. And, you know, again, I've tested the unison versus as close to a real 1073 as I could get my hands on. I was going to get the LB, but I got the Golden Age Premier 73 instead because I like the high-pass filter on it. It's got 2 high-pass filters. It's got an air mode as well. It uses Carnhill transformers. Again, the old ones used Carnhills and stuff like that. So it's been modelled on a 1073, and I've got audio tests from a test in Sweden where it was I think it was it the DPX? No, it wasn't the DPX. It was some form of 1073 and rack mount versus the Premier in the rack mount, and I couldn't tell the difference. I honestly, they were indistinguishable. Now again, I can't talk about the air mode because the air mode is completely different. It's like almost having a 1073 with a mag airband on it. That's why I love it. But in regards to its sound of the preamp, I thought the S's were better in the hardware, but I did level match blind dBs and I couldn't hear the difference. I couldn't consistently pick it out. But one thing I could pick it out on was proximity effect. Proximity effect is something that does really bother me. And again, you've got to be careful when you're recording singers. And it's quite a big part of vocals for me, because once you get those pops in, they're very, 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 very hard to take out. And it's still subtle, but what that kind of golden age pre does is that it kind of tightens up the proximity effect. Like the P's aren't kind of spread out, it's just tighter, and the proximity effect isn't as noticeable. And you know, again, overall the tone's there, but it's just those little things. It's very, very, very close. Like in a blind test, I'd say normal listeners wouldn't tell the difference. Skilled listeners probably would, but it's very, very subjective. And I would go as far to say that Unison 1073 pre is genuinely, genuinely better than any like interface mic pre you're going to use. Honestly, I am a bit of a convert to the Unison stuff. They've all got their sound, but the 1073 one is mwah, beautiful, and it's definitely a good addition to have, because no other interfaces really have that. And for anybody asking, before I forget,
Paul, you could just add in a preamp plugin. You just add in a preamp plugin. That's it. It's just Unison stuff is bullshit.
No, I did like A/B tests, I did blind tests, and there's definitely a difference, like by sticking a plugin after like the fact, using like a stock preamp. The plugins sound pushed, they sound a little bit more dirty, they sound like they have more harmonics in them, and the plosives are worse, and there's more S's in them. And you know, I came to the conclusion that there's a variable when it comes to preamp plugins where, you know, you've got to remember that, like, see this microphone here and any microphone you use, when there's a physical preamp involved, there is a relationship between the impedance of the microphone and the impedance of the preamp. And it's a relationship, a physical relationship that plugins can't. It's just something they can't do. All plugins, like preamp plugins, they're essentially post amps, not preamps, they're post amps. All they could do is kind of try and recreate the harmonic distortion of kind of pushing them hard, but you know, they can't give you the smoothness of a 1073 after the fact, because there is no relationship with impedance. However, as good as all the Unison stuff is, that's only one part of this interface, and unfortunately in terms of connectivity, as great as it is that it's got ADAT in and out, and it's great that it's got SPIDF, it doesn't have optical SPIDF. And many people may be like, well, why would you want optical SPIDF? The reason you want optical SPIDF is because essentially it's a straight digital signal and there's no coloration. It's not an analog signal. Like, think about ADAT, right? It's the best way to transfer one audio from an interface to another interface. Now, thankfully for me, the coaxial SPIDF that the X6 uses sounds identical to the topping USB. For some reason, I thought there was a difference in high end. You know, when you get that placebo thing. But again, I did blind tests, A/Bs back and forth. I could see the frequency response. There was no difference. There is no difference. It is identical. And I drove myself crazy because I'm so pedantic. But I can tell you that as much as this doesn't have optical SPIDF, the coaxial SPIDF, again, if you make sure you get the right cable, what was it? Is it 45? Is it 75 ohm? I can't remember. I've got the right fucking like coaxial cable to use with that. I think it's 75 ohm or something. If it's not, I'll put it down here. So whilst I would have rather, for 1800 quid, this had optical SPIDF, the coaxial SPIDF is very, 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 very high quality. And if you get the right cable, you're going to get the same result. So that's good. However, that's when I've got it working. Right? This, what I'm going to talk to you right now about, is the biggest bugbear for me. And it's one of the biggest stumbling blocks of Apollo's: Windows compatibility. Now, when it comes to me, I've got like a bespoke kind of computer. I'm so fortunate. A subscriber made me a computer, and he made me it, and he put Thunderbolt ports in it and stuff. And it's a pain in the hoop because I have an issue with Thunderbolt. My guy from Universal Audio kind of calls it like a handshake. And it's like the computer needs to have like a virtual handshake to say, yes, I'm switched on. Oh, hello there. Yes, let's connect together. And that, for some reason, the virtual handshake never happens first time round. So when I switch on, and this happens 9 times out of 10, I'm very lucky to actually get it working first time. But when I switch on the computer, I switch it on, and obviously like I load Windows up, the X6 hardly ever is like connected. And so what I've got to do is I've got to restart the computer, and then when I restart the computer, there it is, it connects to the X6. I'd say like nearly every time when I start up the computer and I restart it, it always connects. On the odd occasion, for whatever reason, sometimes I might need to restart it 2 or 3 times and it'll work. But that's not a common occurrence. It's annoying, and for whatever reason, Windows and Apollos, it depends on your Windows system, but for mine, in my Thunderbolt card or whatever I use, I don't know. They see eye to eye, but not at first. But it isn't all doom and gloom. And again, one of the biggest, benefits of the Apollo range is the fact that you get real-time DSP. Because the great thing about the X6 is that it has 6 chips, and it has 6 DSP chips. Before I got the X6, I had a quad PCIe card that was a quad core, and I can tell you that I've not maxed out that X6 yet. It can be maxed out. This definitely can be maxed out if I was to use more plugins, but I've not maxed it out yet. So from that kind of element, it is genuinely, the DSP has been a benefit for me, and people that have got like really, really powerful computers, it's not really going to matter to you. Many people think the DSP is kind of going the way of the dodo, but for me, with my humble i9, yeah, I kind of still need the DSP. Now, something else that kind of really annoyed me, and again it was a big bugbear for me when I first got it, is the fact that the Apollo is basically, it's more of a studio interface. Now, what I mean by that is, when we think of like today's, like content creation, there's a lot of streaming involved. I mean, you could video calls, and people are using like Discord and Zoom, and I use Riverside for the podcast for me and Ed. But when I used to do the podcast on Zoom, and I used to do calls with Warren and stuff like that on Zoom, or like Google Meets or whatever, that thing couldn't work with it. Whenever I tried to like choose it as the main interface, like input 1 or whatever, mic 1, I was just getting all these kind of weird, it sounded like kind of dodgy sample rate, and it sounded distorted and just really, really, really crappy. And no matter what I did, I couldn't fix it. I tried all these kind of workarounds, and I just couldn't do it. And when I spoke to Universal Audio about this kind of streaming, the lack of streaming capabilities, he just put his hands up and was like, Paul, it's just one of those things where the Apollo just isn't made for that. It's studio work. However, there is a workaround, I am happy to tell you. But it took me ages. And even my guy at Universal Audio, even he didn't know the answer to kind of fix my problem. But we got there in the end. And thankfully, what I was able to do was utilize... I'll just link the video up here. I'll give the guy credit, because without him, I wouldn't be able to do it. Basically, what you do is there's an app called Jack Router, and you go through Jack Router, then through Voice Meter Banana, and then if you utilize the two of them together, I can like record through any Zoom, fucking Riverside, whatever, Twitch, whatever, and I could utilize the Unison stuff. I can use all the plugins, I could use my analog gear, I could use anything I want, absolutely anything I want. And it's in a point now where it's generally just like 3 clicks and it's set up like that. So there is ways around it. It's just that for £1,800 it's a workaround that you're not going to find like from Universal Audio themselves. Ed doesn't have to do it again because it's Apple and he's on a Mac. He doesn't have to do it. I can't remember how he gets it. There's a trick that he does it. I think there's a way, if you're on Apple, you set your monitor left and right to inputs 1 and 2 or something like that. But it doesn't work on Windows. That was my way of doing it. So unfortunately, it is a pain in the hoop, but there is a solution. But it's still a pain in the hoop for £1,800. However, again, it's not all doom and gloom. A big benefit of the Apollo is the fact that it has lots of line outs. So in terms of monitoring, you've got a lot of monitoring options. So you've got 2 main monitor outs and then 6 line outs. what's interesting is the main lineouts measure better, in the specs anyway, than the other lineouts, which again is quite good, because if you're using kind of your two monitors, and again you kind of want them to be like as highest quality as physically possible in regards to DAC. So that's a good benefit, and it's good having the lineouts. And then obviously the fact that you've got the 6 separate line-ins. This is something that many interfaces, that's kind of what you pay for. And a part of the price is the fact that you do have separate line-ins. And the reason why separate line-ins are quite important is because it means they are separate from the preamp. Now, that's one of the main reasons why when I push the Audien SP8 and I push the X6, I get less harmonic distortion and noise, because the issue that these kind of Evo 16 and other these kind of more budget units have is that their line-ins are, they're not separate from the preamp. It's almost like the same circuit. So when you're kind of cranking your line in and you're utilising it for ADA or whatever, you're bringing in the distortion from the preamp. That's a benefit. However, again, as I said earlier, it's subjective on how audible that is. But if you are an audiophile, or that stuff really bothers you and you want the cleanest like analog kind of ADA conversion path, then that is quite a benefit. Now, as good as the DAC is, and trust me, it is good, because I've got the topping L30 Mark II headphone amp, and I played it through Audien, I played it through the PreSonus interface, and I got the best digital to analog conversion through the topping L30 Mark II headphone amplifier through the Apollo X6. Transients were better, SimStage was a little bit better, overall it was better DAC. However, I cannot get it confirmed, they won't tell me. There is a mystery on the headphone output impedance. Now, headphone output impedance is really important. I'll link up a video up here if you want to know more about it. But long story short, if you're using low impedance headphones, especially planar ones that have a very low sensitivity, so they're harder to drive, what can happen is that you have like low frequency dampening, and your frequency response is affected, and also you'll get higher levels of distortion in your headphones. Now, I can tell you just from listening, now they won't confirm it, but I can tell you that there must be a high output impedance in those headphone amps. There must be, because I can hear there's a difference in bass response. I could hear there's like the bass response is lifted, and it sounds a little bit not as clean, and yeah, it's just an audible difference, compared to, if I go through a headphone amplifier, or again, through especially through my top-end DX7 Pro Plus, there is a massive difference. So if you have high impedance headphones, like Sennheiser's, you'll be fine. I think you'll be absolutely fine. It definitely has the power to kind of drive power-hungry high impedance headphones. However, if you have low impedance headphones, then your linearity will be affected, and you could definitely hear it. And even I got Ed Thorne involved, and even he was like, yeah, I can hear it as well. So whilst the DAC is good, the headphone amplifier isn't kind of an all-purpose headphone amplifier. So I would say that the headphone amps are great for tracking, very good for tracking, because you get direct monitoring through the Apollo X6. So it's really good for tracking. I use it for tracking and stuff, and sounds great. But if you were mixing on headphones, I would definitely, especially if you're using low impedance headphones, not to use the headphone amps. However, I will say that this is a very, very, very common issue with nearly every interface on the market, because look at the size of them. It's especially the Prisms, even though they're $3,000, they're notorious for their headphone amps being shit, because just fucking check the size of them. And that brings me to the end of the video, the most important question. Is the Apollo X6 value for money? Is it worth £1,800? Realistically, no, because the Evo 16 and the SP8 together is 800 quid. And with that, obviously you've got like the SP8 was expanding the Evo 16. You've got all the kind of mic inputs that you're going to need. You've got 16 ins and outs. However, if we kind of look at the Apollo X6 from what the market is just now, then yes, it is definitely at a good price. And you'll be like, what? £1,800, Paul. Right, let's put it into context, right? Let's put this into context. Lynx and Prism. We all know these two expensive interfaces. Now, I've got this written down just so I get this bang on. Okay, let's see. Right, the Lynx Aurora, right, N, 8 in, 8 out, no preamps, no DSP, no ADAT, no SPIDF, £3,200. Are you having a giraffe when we have ADC in the Apollo of minus 135 dB? And then, right, if we compare that to the Prism Lyra, or Lyra, or whatever they call it, I think it's Lyra. Not 2, 1, Prism Lyra 1, £1,700, one headphone amp, which is shit apparently, one mic input, 2 line in and 2 line outs. For this practically £100 cheaper, you're getting such a limited option. Nah, when you compare the Apollo to the price of those two, and especially the fact that people still buy them, then unfortunately it is actually quite bang for buck, really. Now, many are going to jump the gun and be like,
But Paul, the pre-sound is quantum, That guy did a fucking shootout, and I'm telling you right now, nobody could tell the difference, and it was cheaper. Stick out